It was the day after my 72nd birthday, and my daughter Charlotte had a surprise for me. A mattress on the laundry room floor, in the very home I paid for. I just smiled, listening to her laughter upstairs, knowing they had no idea what was coming. I need you to hear how this ends. Like, share, and tell me where you're listening from. The cold seeped into my bones and even through the thin mattress and the worn quilt I'd brought with me. It was a permanent chill, distinct from the outside winter air. It emanated from the concrete floor of what was now my bedroom. The rhythmic hum of the washing machine, coupled with the low thrum of the dryer, filled the cramped space, a constant reminder of my new reality. My daughter Charlotte and her husband Marcus had relegated me, Eleanor Vance, to the laundry room. 72 years I'd walked this earth, lived a life of quiet dignity and tireless work. 72 years, and it had come to this. Charlotte had tried to soften the blow with a saccharine smile and a pat on my shoulder, her words echoing in my memory. "It's for your own good, Mother. Nursing homes are just so expensive, and we want you close. This is much more practical." Practical for whom, I wondered, as the scent of fabric softener mingled with the faint, metallic tang of cold cement. Just 3 months ago, I had slept in the master bedroom upstairs, a room I had meticulously decorated with memories and comfort. A home, the entirety of which I had paid off with the sweat and sacrifice of a 40-year career as a registered nurse. Every brick, every shingle, every square foot was a testament to my resilience, my independence. Now the master bedroom was theirs, and I was here, a castaway in my own home. Marcus, bless his spineless heart, couldn't even meet my gaze as they moved my last few boxes down the narrow basement stairs. His mumbled apologies about needing a home office and optimizing space were as transparent as Charlotte's manufactured concern. He kept his eyes fixed on the boxes, shifting his weight awkwardly from one foot to the other, like a child caught with his hand in the cookie jar. I watched them both, my face a mask of weary acceptance, but my mind was already racing, piecing together the insidious puzzle of their intentions. Soon after my banishment, the distinct clinking of glasses drifted down from upstairs. Champagne, no doubt. A celebration of their newly acquired home office, their triumphant takeover. Their laughter, light and carefree, grated on my nerves, each peal a fresh insult echoing in the hollow space where my peace of mind used to reside. I pushed myself up, my joints protesting, and peered out the small, dusty window of the laundry room. My gaze settled on the old maple tree in the backyard, its bare branches reaching like skeletal fingers toward the gray winter sky. I remembered planting it the day Charlotte was born, a tiny sapling against the backdrop of a hopeful spring. We had been so happy then, a small family full of dreams. She used to climb its sturdy trunk, her laughter a genuine melody, not the mocking cadence I heard now. What had happened to that little girl? What had transformed her into this stranger, capable of such calculated cruelty? The memory of last Christmas resurfaced, a bitter taste in my mouth. Marcus, with his practiced charm, had first floated the idea. "This house is simply too big for one person, Eleanor," he'd said, his hand resting gently, almost paternally, on my arm. "Charlotte and we worry about you out here alone. Why don't we move in? We could help you with everything." I remembered how their words had felt like a warm embrace, a lifeline thrown to a drowning woman. My sister Clara had passed away just months before, leaving a chasm in my heart that no amount of solitude could fill. The silence in the house, once a comfort, had become a crushing weight. My loneliness had made me vulnerable, an open wound to their manipulative kindness. I had welcomed them, foolishly believing they genuinely cared, that their offers of assistance were born of love, not avarice. The takeover had been gradual, insidious. First the garage, to store Marcus's tools, then the spare bedroom, for a guest room for our friends. Soon the living room became their personal entertainment space, and then the ultimate betrayal, my master bedroom. Each concession was accompanied by reassurances, by promises of care and companionship that had long since evaporated. I knew their pattern. I could practically predict their next move. Papers for me to sign, undoubtedly framed as routine stuff, legal formalities necessary for my well-being or simplifying things. I could almost hear the words on Charlotte's tongue, syrupy and condescending. But what they didn't know, what they couldn't possibly fathom, was that I had been observing them, patiently, silently, like a spider weaving its web. I had seen the avarice in their eyes, heard the whispered conversations about my assets, my investments, the sheer value of my property. They spoke as if I were already a ghost haunting my own home. A faint vibration in my pocket startled me. I pulled out my phone. A text from Beatrice, my oldest and dearest friend, a woman who knew more about me than Charlotte ever would. Her message was short, direct, a confirmation of a plan meticulously crafted behind their backs. All set for Friday. They won't know what hit them. A grim smile touched my lips, a genuine one this time, cold as the floor beneath me. They thought they were so clever, so cunning. They believed they had me trapped, a helpless old woman awaiting her fate. But while they were busy plotting my demise, I had been busy securing my future. My assets, every penny, every stock, every bond, were no longer in my name. They were safely tucked away in an irrevocable trust, untouchable, inaccessible to their grasping hands. I adjusted the quilt, settling back onto the mattress, the hum of the appliances a lullaby to my secret. Upstairs, their laughter continued, a symphony of misguided triumph. Let them celebrate. Let them clink their champagne glasses. They were toasting to an empty victory, completely unaware that the real game had already been played, and I, Eleanor Vance, had already won. The ache in my lower back was a persistent throb, a dull, constant reminder of the previous day's forced relocation. Waking on the laundry room mattress, the chill of the concrete floor still permeating the thin padding, I felt every one of my 72 years. It was a stark contrast to the comfortable, supportive mattress of the master bedroom I had occupied for decades. 35 years. That's how long it had been since Charlotte was a bright-eyed teenager, filled with boundless potential, and I, her devoted mother, had embarked on a journey of relentless sacrifice to see her dreams realized. I remembered the burn of exhaustion, the bitter taste of lukewarm coffee during late-night shifts. I had worked 2 jobs, nursing patients through their darkest hours, only to return home to tackle the endless demands of single parenthood. All of it, every aching muscle, every missed social event, every penny earned, was for Charlotte's expensive private college education. She had excelled, of course, brilliant and charming, and on the day she graduated, diploma in hand, she had hugged me tight, her voice thick with emotion. "Someday I'll take care of you, Mother," she'd promised, her eyes shining with what I believe was genuine gratitude. The memory now felt like a cruel joke, a ghost of a promise lingering in the stale air of my new living quarters. A sharp rap on the door, followed immediately by its swing inward, announced Charlotte's arrival. She didn't wait for an invitation. Her sense of entitlement now fully bloomed. In her hand, she held a mug, which she placed unceremoniously on the overturned laundry basket serving as my bedside table. "Here's some coffee, Mother," she announced, her tone brittle, a practiced cheerfulness that didn't quite reach her eyes. The coffee naturally was lukewarm. "And just a heads up, I'll need this room clear in about an hour. Marcus needs to use the industrial dryer for some prototypes." Her gaze flickered over my meager belongings, dismissing them as easily as she dismissed me. I took a slow sip of the tepid liquid, a small, deliberate act to buy myself time. "Oh, before I forget," I began, making sure my voice sounded casual. "George called yesterday. My financial advisor. You remember him?" I watched her closely, a tiny shift in her expression, a flicker of something predatory in her eyes. "He just wanted to confirm a few things. Nothing important, just routine." Her attention sharpened instantly, a hawk spotting its prey. She leaned against the door frame, a picture of feigned interest. "Oh, George? Really? What sort of routine things, Mother? Everything all right?" The concern was paper-thin, easily seen through. I simply smiled, a benign, slightly confused expression. "Oh, just some old investments. Nothing for you to worry your pretty head about, dear." She pressed a little more, but I feigned forgetfulness, allowing her to eventually huff away, frustrated by my evasiveness. As soon as her footsteps faded, I reached under my mattress, pulling out a small, leather-bound notebook. It was my secret ledger, a silent witness to their slow, calculated usurpation. Every slight, every dismissive comment, every overheard conversation about her assets and what to do with the house was meticulously documented. Dates, means, fragments of dialogue. It was all here, an undeniable chronicle of their greed. I scribbled down Charlotte's sudden interest in George, adding it to the growing evidence. The memory of Arthur, my beloved husband, surfaced then, a familiar ache in my chest. He had died 23 years ago, too soon, leaving me a widow with a 10-year-old daughter. The world had turned gray for a time, but Charlotte had been my beacon. I had depleted our resources then, not out of foolishness, but out of a fierce desire to fill the void Arthur had left, to ensure Charlotte never felt the sting of lack. Every whim, every desire she expressed, I had indulged. Ballet lessons, the latest fashion trends, expensive summer camps. If she wanted it, I found a way to provide it. I never remarried. My world for 2 decades revolved solely around Charlotte. Tutors to ensure her grades stayed perfect, a shiny new car the day she turned 16, and then the colossal burden of her student loans, which I quietly paid off in full, just as I had for her college tuition. I had built my life around her, neglecting my own needs, my own desires, believing that in doing so, I was securing a future for both of us, a future built on mutual love and respect. Then Marcus had entered the picture. I remembered the first time he visited, a casual dinner party. His eyes, even then, had lingered a little too long on Arthur's antique grandfather clock, a family heirloom that chimed with the ghosts of generations past. I saw the calculation in his gaze, a cold, assessing gleam that had instantly set off alarms I had, foolishly, ignored. Their marriage was quick, a whirlwind of manufactured romance, and soon after Leo arrived, my only grandchild. Leo, with Arthur's kind eyes, a tiny spark of genuine innocence in a world that was becoming increasingly cynical. He was the one bright spot, a glimmer of hope that perhaps not all was lost. From upstairs, Marcus's impatient voice drifted down the heating vents. "Did you talk to her about the papers, Charlotte? We really need to get those sorted." Charlotte's reply, a little too loud, a little too casual, was instantly clear. "No, not yet, honey. Let's wait until after we get the kitchen renovation approved. No need to upset her yet." The audacity of it, the chilling callousness. They were planning a kitchen renovation, likely expecting me to foot the bill, or at least have my assets available for it, even as they plotted to strip me of everything. Papers. The word hung in the air, a poisonous cloud. They spoke of the papers they intended for me to sign, but my mind drifted to the papers I had signed. Weeks, months even, of discreet meetings with lawyers and bankers, orchestrating a maneuver they couldn't possibly foresee. The irrevocable trust, the carefully drafted clauses, the meticulous transfer of every last penny. They were playing checkers while I was playing chess. My phone vibrated again. "Beatrice. Lunch at our usual spot," her text read. "And don't forget those documents from your safe deposit box. Friday's almost here." A small smile, almost imperceptible, touched my lips. Yes, Friday. Just then, a small, tentative knock came from the laundry room door. My heart, against my will, softened. Leo, my grandson, stood there, his hair still tousled from sleep, those kind, inherited eyes full of a genuine concern that neither of his parents possessed. He held out a small MP3 player, its surface slightly scuffed. "Grandma," he whispered, his voice barely audible, "I put all your favorite classical music on here. You can listen while you're down here." He glanced nervously toward the stairs. "I don't like what Mom and Dad are doing," he added, his voice low, a flicker of defiance in his young eyes. I took the player, my fingers brushing his small hand, a warmth spreading through me that the lukewarm coffee couldn't provide. He was collateral damage, I realized, a casualty of his parents' greed. The thought pained me, but I knew with a certainty that settled deep in my bones that he needed to learn the consequences of such actions, even if it meant a difficult lesson. Later, as the classical music drifted softly from the MP3 player, I watched Charlotte and Marcus through the small window. They were in the backyard, gesturing wildly, planning what Charlotte called the garden's transformation. I imagined them discussing new pavers, an elaborate outdoor kitchen, perhaps even a swimming pool, all funded by the inheritance they believed was within their grasp. They stood there, oblivious, on what I knew was quicksand, their carefully constructed world about to crumble beneath their very feet. The digital clock on the washing machine glowed an unforgiving 15 a.m. My internal alarm had beaten it by half an hour, a lifetime habit from my nursing days. Yet this particular morning, the early rise felt less like discipline and more like a punishment. At 7:30 a.m. precisely, Charlotte would sweep into the laundry room, her face a mask of efficiency, ready to begin her daily cycle of linens. I had to be out by then, my mattress pushed against the wall, my meager belongings stowed away. It was another ritual of humiliation, a carefully choreographed dance of displacement. I rose slowly, my back stiff from another night on the thin mattress, and began to carefully fold the few items of clothing I still possessed. A faded cardigan, 2 pairs of slacks, a handful of blouses. Most of my wardrobe, the comfortable, familiar pieces that had served me for years, had vanished. Charlotte had donated them, she'd announced cheerfully a few weeks ago, to make space, Mother. You don't need so many things anymore. She hadn't asked, of course. She simply did, erasing my presence piece by piece from my own home. As I tucked my folded clothes into a small plastic bin, a faint murmur drifted down from upstairs. Marcus, I strained to listen, my hearing still remarkably sharp despite my age. His voice was low, conspiratorial, but I caught snippets. She'll sign, don't worry, Charlotte knows how to handle her mother. The words hung in the air, cold and calculated, confirming my suspicions. They believed I was a mere puppet, easily manipulated, a signature waiting to be acquired. Later that morning, the summons came. Charlotte's voice, laced with an artificial brightness, called me to the sunroom. Marcus was already there, hovering nervously by the French doors, his posture stiff, his eyes avoiding mine. Charlotte, however, met my gaze with a almost theatrical smile. Mother, we have something wonderful to show you, she announced, her voice pitched higher than usual. She spread an array of glossy brochures across the glass-top table. Vibrant images of manicured lawns, beaming seniors playing bingo, and spacious, sunlit rooms filled the pages. Sunny Meadows, she declared, pointing to a particularly inviting picture of a communal dining area. It's a wonderful assisted living community. Mother, just gorgeous. All your needs taken care of. And look, it's only about 2 hours away. A lovely drive. 2 hours away. Miles from my friends, my doctors, the familiar rhythm of my life. It was a prison disguised as a resort. I picked up a brochure, my fingers tracing the smiling faces of strangers. It looks lovely, dear, I said, my voice calm, almost detached. But these places are terribly expensive, aren't they? How would I pay for something like this? I knew the answer, of course. They planned to use my savings, the nest egg I had meticulously built over decades, the very funds they believed were still under my control. Marcus, sensing his cue, stepped forward, a leather-bound folder in his hand. He placed it carefully on the table, sliding it towards me. Well, Mother, he began, his voice surprisingly gentle, almost unctuous. That's where this comes in. It's just a power of attorney, a simple document. It's a precaution, really, to ensure your well-being, to manage your affairs so you don't have to worry about a thing. I almost laughed. A power of attorney. The irony was palpable. These two, who had to refinance their modest home every few years, who lived perpetually on the brink of financial disaster, thought they could manage my affairs. My own financial acumen, honed over years of careful investment and prudent saving, far surpassed their meager understanding of real wealth. They saw only the numbers, not the intricate web of strategy and foresight behind them. I picked up the document, pretending to read the first few lines. My mind, however, was already 2 steps ahead. I see, I said, looking up at them, my expression thoughtful. This is a very important document, children. I'll need some time to think about it, and of course, I'll need my own lawyer to review it before I sign anything. Marcus's polite facade cracked. His face hardened, a flicker of genuine surprise in his eyes. Your, your own lawyer, Mother? He stammered, caught off guard. Who would that be? George, perhaps? He knew then that my phone call with George had not been as innocuous as I'd pretended. Charlotte, ever the quicker one, immediately interjected, her smile strained. Oh, Mother, that's really not necessary. We can explain everything. It's perfectly straightforward. But I held up a hand, a gesture of quiet authority that surprised even myself. No, Charlotte, I insist. This is a big step. I need time, and George, he's been my advisor for years. He knows my wishes. They exchanged frustrated glances, the thin veneer of their concern dissolving to reveal the raw impatience beneath. But we've already put down a deposit, Mother, Marcus blurted out, unable to hold back his irritation. A deposit? I repeated, feigning shock. Without my consent? On what grounds? Their silence was answer enough. They had been so confident, so assured of my compliance. It was a small victory, but a victory nonetheless. As soon as I was back in the laundry room, I pulled out my phone. A quick text to Beatrice. They're making their move. Power of attorney and assisted living. Still on for tomorrow? Her immediate reply, absolutely. Consider it done, sent a wave of quiet satisfaction through me. Dinner was a tense affair. I was relegated to the far end of the dining table, a lonely island across from Charlotte and Marcus, who whispered furiously between bites, their faces etched with frustration. Leo, bless his innocent heart, was the only one who seemed to notice my discomfort. Grandma, he piped up, interrupting his parents' hushed conversation, can you help me with my history project this weekend? It's about the ancient Egyptians. Charlotte's fork clattered against her plate. Leo, darling, Grandma might not be here this weekend, she said, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness, a clear warning. Leo's lower lip trembled. But why not? She always helps me. It's important. He looked at me, his eyes wide with a genuine plea. Charlotte shot me an accusatory look, as if I had somehow orchestrated Leo's protest. I simply met her gaze, a silent challenge. Later that evening, after the house had quieted, Leo crept down to the laundry room. He found me sitting on my mattress, documenting the day's events in my notebook. Grandma, he whispered, his small face serious, are Mom and Dad trying to get rid of you? His directness startled me. And is it about money? He paused, then added, I heard Dad talking about liquidating stuff to Aunt Sarah on the phone. My heart ached for him. He was too young to bear the weight of such cynical adult machinations. I gently pulled him closer. Don't you worry your sweet head about that, Leo, I murmured, stroking his hair. Everything will be all right. Grandma's got it handled. I tried to reassure him, though my own resolve was hardening with every passing minute. Tomorrow was crucial. The final pieces of my intricate plan needed to fall into place. As Leo returned upstairs, I could hear their voices again, muffled but distinct, their argument rising in intensity. Charlotte's voice, sharp and high-pitched, cut through the quiet. She has to sign, Marcus. One way or another, we're getting her signature. Their conviction fueled my own. They had no idea what storm they were truly stirring. Precisely at noon, the familiar rattle of Beatrice's ancient Buick pulling into the driveway was music to my ears. It was a perfectly timed symphony, orchestrated to coincide with Charlotte and Marcus's departure. Moments before they had swept out of the house, Charlotte's voice loud and cheerful as she declared they were off to a very important lunch with potential investors. As she paused by the front door, she turned to me, her smile a little too tight. Mother, don't forget, the kitchen contractor will be here by 3 p.m. Make sure you're back by then, and please, just be out of the way, won't you? The implication was clear. Stay hidden, don't interfere, didn't waste a second. With a quick glance to ensure the coast was clear, I hurried out to Beatrice's car, the cool autumn air a welcome contrast to the stale atmosphere of the house. Beatrice, her kind eyes full of concern, immediately noticed my drawn face. Eleanor, you look utterly exhausted, she said, her voice a soft murmur as I settled into the passenger seat. Are you all right? As Beatrice navigated her way through the familiar streets, I looked out the window, past the changing leaves of the oak trees in the neat rows of suburban homes. Each landmark seemed to trigger a memory, the old elementary school where Charlotte had performed her first play, the ice cream parlor where we'd celebrated countless birthdays, the park where Arthur and I had pushed her on the swings. Memories of a life I had built, piece by laborious piece for her. The sacrifices, the late nights, the endless striving to give her every opportunity. It all felt like a lifetime ago, a distant echo from a forgotten past. Beatrice pulled into the discreet parking lot of Harrington Legal Services. The firm's name, etched in understated gold on the frosted glass door, promised professionalism and discretion. Inside, David Miller, a distinguished lawyer with kind but sharp eyes and an impeccable gray suit, was already waiting for us. He rose as we entered, extending a hand to me with genuine respect. "Eleanor Beatrice, thank you for coming." For the next hour, we sat in his hushed office reviewing the intricate details of my plan. The trust, which I had secretly established 3 years ago, was the cornerstone. It was an irrevocable trust, carefully structured, into which I had transferred the ownership of my house, my investments, and all other significant assets. Every document, every date, every signature was meticulously in place. We also went over the painstaking documentation I had gathered on Charlotte and Marcus's treatment of me. The verbal slights, the forced relocation, the attempts to coerce me into signing a power of attorney. Their plans for Sunny Meadows. My notebook, now thick with entries, lay open on his desk. David Miller nodded slowly, his expression impressed. "Eleanor, your foresight is truly remarkable. Most individuals only seek legal counsel when they are in crisis, when it's often too late to fully protect their interests. You, however, had the wisdom to plan ahead. Being a nurse for 40 years teaches you a lot about human nature," I explained, a touch of weariness in my voice. "I've seen firsthand how quickly families can turn when money is involved, how greed can poison even the strongest bonds." I recounted their plans for the assisted living facility 3 hours away, their thinly veiled attempts to gain control of my savings, the deposit they had already placed without my consent. "I confirm my decision to proceed," I stated, my voice firm, leaving no room for doubt. David Miller assured me the final documents would be ready for my signature tomorrow. Formal notice would then be served to Charlotte and Marcus on Friday, a day I now anticipated with a mixture of trepidation and grim satisfaction. Beatrice, ever thoughtful, interjected, "What about Leo, David, Eleanor's grandson? Is he protected in all this?" David Miller offered a reassuring smile. "Absolutely, Beatrice. Eleanor established a separate educational trust for Leo years ago, completely independent of her main assets. It's fully funded and secure. His future is well provided for, no matter what happens." A small wave of relief washed over me. Leo was innocent in all of this, and his well-being was paramount. Before we left, David Miller handed me a small, discreet voice recorder. "For any future conversations, Eleanor," he advised, "always better to have undeniable evidence." I nodded, tucking the device into my purse. As we walked out of the office and back into the sunlight, I felt a lightness I hadn't experienced in months. The plan was in motion. The wheels of justice, or at least my version of it, were finally turning. "Beatrice," I said as she started the car, "could we make a quick stop at Riverview Park, to Arthur's memorial bench?" I needed to sit there, to feel his quiet strength, to seek his silent counsel for the storm that was gathering. My phone buzzed as we drove. A text from Leo. "Grandma, Mom and Dad came home early. They're super mad. I think they know you met with lawyers. They're yelling." My heart sank, a knot forming in my stomach. So much for their important lunch. "Beatrice, step on it," I urged, a new urgency in my voice. We pulled into my driveway minutes later. Charlotte was pacing angrily in the living room, her face flushed, her hands clenched into fists. Marcus stood rigidly by the fireplace, his jaw tight, his eyes burning with a controlled fury. "Where have you been, Mother?" Charlotte demanded, her voice shrill as I walked through the door. "We've been worried sick. You were supposed to be back by 3. I met her gaze, unflinching. "Worried, Charlotte? That's a new emotion for you. As for where I've been, perhaps I went for a drive, enjoyed the fresh air. Why, is there a problem with that?" I paused, letting my words hang in the air. Besides, speaking of whereabouts, perhaps you can tell me more about this Sunny Meadows facility you have been so secretive about. And that deposit. Their reactions were immediate and unsettled. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. Charlotte's anger flared, then just as quickly, she forced it down, her tone abruptly softer, more calculated. The shift was almost imperceptible, but I knew what it meant. They were regrouping, reassessing. I need to rest, I stated, my voice weary but firm, cutting off any further accusations. I walked past them, giving Leo, who had appeared nervously at the top of the stairs, a reassuring smile and a subtle wink. He was worried, but he was not alone. Back in the cold solitude of the laundry room, I carefully placed the small voice recorder under my pillow. The crucial 2 days ahead would be a battle of wills, a test of my resolve. But I was ready. If you've been with me so far, you know things are about to get really interesting. Don't miss the next twist. Keep watching, like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe so you don't miss a single part of my story. Friday morning arrived with an unusual stillness, a calm before the storm that settled deep in my bones. I felt strangely peaceful, a certainty solidifying within me that today would be the day. The air itself seemed to hold its breath, anticipating the coming reckoning. A soft tap on the laundry room door broke the silence. A gentle tap, unlike Charlotte's usual brusque entry. "Mother, are you awake? I've made blueberry pancakes." Her voice was sweet, laced with an affection so rare it almost felt foreign. Blueberry pancakes, my favorite. A transparent attempt to butter me up, a peace offering before the kill. I reached under my pillow, my fingers closing around the small voice recorder David Miller had given me. I slipped it into the deep pocket of my worn robe, the cold plastic a reassuring weight against my hip. I took a deep breath, composed myself, and then, with a placid smile, opened the door. "Pancakes? How lovely, Charlotte." The kitchen table, usually a chaotic mess of cereal boxes and half-eaten toast, was impeccably set. My good china, the delicate floral pattern Arthur had bought me for our 10th anniversary, adorned the table. Silverware gleamed, and a small vase of fresh-cut flowers sat in the center. Marcus and Leo were already seated, Marcus attempting to project an air of jovial warmth that didn't quite reach his anxious eyes. Leo, sensing the tension, sat quietly, his small face a mask of worry. Charlotte poured me a cup of coffee, her movements precise, almost theatrical. "We rescheduled the contractor," she explained, her voice honeyed. "We decided family time was more important this morning." I sat down, carefully arranging my napkin on my lap. I ate slowly, savoring the pancakes, though my appetite was more for justice than for food. I watched them, Charlotte's forced smile, Marcus's twitching leg beneath the table. Their impatience was palpable, a thinly veiled eagerness to get on with their nefarious business. Leo, meanwhile, picked at his food, his eyes darting between his parents and me, his unease growing with every passing second. Finally, after what felt like an eternity of small talk and feigned pleasantries, Marcus cleared his throat. It was a loud, deliberate sound, signaling the end of the charade. He pushed a stack of documents across the table, the power of attorney and the glossy brochures for Sunny Meadows. "Mother," he began, his voice dropping to a serious, almost paternal tone. "We've been talking, and we really think it's time to finalize these arrangements, for your own good." Beneath the table, my finger found the small button on the voice recorder. A faint click, imperceptible to anyone else, confirmed it was on. "All right," I said, my voice calm, almost cooperative. "Let's discuss it. What exactly happens if I sign these papers?" Charlotte leaned forward, her eyes gleaming with anticipation. "Well then, everything will be taken care of. The movers will come on Monday, and you'll be settled into your lovely new suite at Sunny Meadows. No more worries, Mother, just peace and quiet." "And the house?" I asked, looking around the kitchen, a lifetime of memories in its walls. "My belongings? My jewelry? The pieces Arthur gave me?" Marcus waved a dismissive hand. "Oh, we'll sort all of that out. We'll decide what's best. Some things can go to charity, some we might keep for sentimental value, of course. Your jewelry, well, we'll make sure it's secure." "Secure for whom?" I wondered. "And my money? My investments?" I continued, my voice betraying no emotion. Marcus puffed out his chest slightly. "We'll manage all of that for you, Mother. You won't have to lift a finger. We'll handle your finances, ensure everything is in order, complete peace of mind. I took a slow sip of coffee, my eyes meeting Charlotte's. How convenient, I murmured, the words barely a whisper, yet potent enough to cut through their practiced calm. Charlotte's pleasant facade cracked. A flicker of irritation crossed her face. Mother, this is not a negotiation. This is what's best for everyone. For everyone? I countered, my voice rising slightly, a hint of steel entering its tone. Or just for you and Marcus? Charlotte's eyes narrowed, her carefully constructed composure giving way to genuine frustration. You're being difficult, Mother. We're trying to help you. I placed my hand flat on the table, a gesture of quiet defiance. Because it's my life, Charlotte. My home, my money. Each word was deliberate, a stake driven into the heart of their deception. Marcus's face darkened, a menacing shadow creeping into his eyes. You need us, Eleanor, he said, his voice low, a clear threat. You're an old woman living alone. You're vulnerable. I pushed the papers back towards him. My hand reached for the pen, their expressions instantly shifting from anger to relief, a premature sense of victory washing over their faces. They thought they had me. They thought I was finally yielding. But instead of taking the pen, my hands swept across the table, revealing the brochures for Sunny Meadows. $5,000 a month, I said, my voice steady, my eyes fixed on Charlotte. That's what Sunny Meadows costs. And you've already put down a deposit. How exactly do you plan to pay for that, considering your own rather precarious financial situation? Their faces went slack, their eyes wide with shock. Before they could formulate a response, I reached into my robe pocket and pulled out David Miller's business card, placing it gently on the table next to the power of attorney. This is David Miller, I announced, my lawyer. He knows all about Sunny Meadows and your plans. Just then, as if on cue, the doorbell chimed, a crisp, insistent sound that echoed through the sudden silence of the kitchen. Marcus's face drained of color, turning a sickly shade of gray. He stared at the front door, then back at me, a dawning horror in his eyes. That, I said, my voice clear and strong, a triumphant note resonating through the room, will be Mr. Miller now. He's here to discuss the irrevocable trust I established 3 years ago. The trust that now owns this house and most of my assets. The trap was sprung. I opened the front door to reveal David Miller, impeccably dressed and radiating an aura of calm authority. His eyes met mine, a silent question passing between us. Are you ready, Eleanor? He asked, his voice low, a professional courtesy that barely masked the gravity of the moment. I simply nodded, stepping aside. As he entered, his gaze swept past me, landing on Charlotte and Marcus, who were still frozen at the kitchen table, their faces a tableau of disbelief and growing horror. From the kitchen doorway where he had retreated, Leo watched, a faint, almost imperceptible hint of a smile playing on his lips. He understood. David Miller didn't waste words. He stood in the living room, his posture firm, and laid out the terms of the trust with clear, precise language. The house, this home they had so greedily coveted, was no longer mine to sign away, nor theirs to inherit. It belonged to the irrevocable trust, established 3 years prior, with me as the beneficiary during my lifetime, and then after my passing, to a series of charities with a specific, generous provision for Leo's ongoing education. My investments, my savings, my jewelry, all were protected, carefully shielded from their grasp. Then came the final, devastating blow. Charlotte and Marcus, you have 30 days to vacate the premises. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the rapid thumping of my own heart. I watched their faces, the dawning comprehension, the raw shock, the betrayal flickering in Charlotte's eyes. A wave of vindication washed over me, cold and sharp, but it was quickly followed by a profound sorrow. To have to protect myself from my own child, to orchestrate such a legal maneuver against the daughter I had sacrificed everything for. It was a bitter victory indeed. The following weeks were a blur of activity, a whirlwind that Leo, with a child's simple wisdom, aptly dubbed the reckoning. Charlotte and Marcus, bewildered and furious, eventually packed their belongings. Their departure was a tense, sullen affair, devoid of any farewells, only the slamming of car doors and the screech of tires. The silence they left behind was vast, but this time it was a peaceful, healing quiet. Now, a few months later, I sat on the small, sun-drenched balcony of my new apartment at Willow Creek Retirement Community. It wasn't a nursing home, but an independent living community, vibrant and full of life, a far cry from the desolate, sterile image Charlotte had painted. The air here smelled of freshly cut grass and blooming flowers, not the oppressive scent of fear and betrayal. Beatrice joined me, her face beaming, carrying a tray with 2 tall glasses of iced tea. "Perfect day for it," she declared, settling into the chair opposite me. "Have you heard from them, dear?" she asked, her voice gentle, ever thoughtful. "Leo calls every few days," I confirmed, taking a sip of the cool tea. "He says they are staying with Marcus's brother in Nevada. It seems his brother isn't too thrilled about it either." I smiled faintly. Poor Leo, he's trying to navigate it all. I gazed out at the sprawling green lawns, the distant mountains hazy blue on the horizon. My initial shock and anger had over time been replaced by a quiet acceptance. I had done what I had to do, not out of malice, but out of a desperate need for self-preservation. It was a painful lesson, but one that had freed me. Beatrice had been a rock through it all, helping me pack, arrange furniture, turning this new apartment into a home that truly felt like my own. My personal touches were everywhere. Arthur's antique grandfather clock, a few cherished photos, a comfortable armchair by the window where I could read. A soft knock interrupted my thoughts. I half expected Leo, who often surprised me with spontaneous visits. When I opened the door, my breath caught. Leo stood there, but slightly behind him, her head bowed, her eyes downcast, was Charlotte. "Grandma," Leo whispered, his voice tentative. "Can Mom come in?" I hesitated, a long moment stretching between us. Memories, both fond and hurtful, flashed through my mind. The image of the laundry room mattress, the patronizing smiles, the glint of greed in her eyes. But then I saw Leo's hopeful gaze, and a different kind of memory surfaced. That little girl climbing the maple tree, her laughter genuine and pure. With a slow breath, I stepped aside. "Come in, Charlotte," I said, my voice neutral, betraying none of the turmoil inside me. Charlotte entered cautiously, her eyes sweeping over the comfortable living space, the personal touches that made it undeniably mine. She recognized it, I think, as the physical manifestation of my independence, a space she had tried to deny me. Beatrice, ever perceptive, rose gracefully. "Well, I believe this is my cue," she said with a warm smile, her gaze encompassing all three of us. "Eleanor, I'll pop back over tomorrow for our bridge game, shall I?" I nodded gratefully. An awkward silence filled the room once Beatrice had discreetly departed. The air was thick with unspoken words, with years of love and betrayal. Leo, sensing the tension, piped up, "Grandma, your new place is really nice. It's so much better than, you know." He trailed off, but I knew exactly what he meant. I let out a soft, genuine laugh, a sound that felt foreign and wonderful after so long. "Yes, Leo," I agreed, a touch of wry humor in my voice. "It's quite an upgrade from the laundry room, isn't it?" My gaze met Charlotte's, and for the first time in a very long time, she looked away. Charlotte winced visibly at the mention of the laundry room, her gaze dropping to the floor. The vibrant, sun-drenched living room of my new apartment felt like a stark contrast to the cramped, utilitarian space she had relegated me to. It's really lovely here, Mother," she murmured, her voice barely a whisper, a stark departure from her usual assertive tone. It was the first time I'd heard a hint of genuine humility from her in years. We sat in silence for a moment, the comfortable new furniture, a silent witness to the years of unspoken tension. I observed Charlotte carefully. Gone were the designer clothes, the expensive accessories she once flaunted. She wore a simple dress, her hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. Life, it seemed, had taught her some harsh lessons. Leo, bless his heart, stepped into the breach, his youthful energy a welcome distraction. He chattered away about school, his friends, the upcoming science fair, filling the awkward silence with innocent chatter. I listened intently, asking questions, offering encouragement, demonstrating, I hoped, what genuine family interaction should sound like, devoid of hidden agendas or financial motives. After a while, Leo, ever curious, excused himself. Grandma, can I go check out the community game room? I saw a pool table earlier. I smiled, nodding my permission. Of course, sweetheart. Be careful. He darted off, leaving Charlotte and me finally, truly alone. The silence that descended was heavy, pregnant with unaddressed history. I waited, allowing her to break it, and finally she did. Her voice was strained, thick with emotion. We were wrong, Mother, she confessed, her gaze still fixed on her hands, clasped tightly in her lap. So wrong, what we did to you. It was unforgivable. I remained silent, allowing her words to hang in the air, allowing her to truly own them. It was not my place to make it easier for her. She needed to feel the weight of her actions. She continued, It started out, we just needed a temporary place to stay. Marcus's business wasn't doing well, and we had debts. But then he started talking about the house equity, your savings, how much we could get. And you listened, I finished for her, my voice quiet, almost devoid of accusation. Charlotte nodded miserably. Yes, I listened. We were desperate, Mother, more desperate than you know. Marcus's last venture, it failed spectacularly. And my own spending, I just couldn't seem to stop. Her voice cracked. We were drowning, and you had so much. So much that you thought it was yours for the taking, I stated, my eyes meeting hers. She flinched but didn't look away this time. He's furious, you know, she said, her voice barely audible. Marcus, he wanted to contest the trust, said it wasn't fair. But his lawyer, he said it was ironclad, that you'd thought of everything. There was a grudging admiration in her tone, a bitter pill she was forced to swallow. I had to, I said simply. I had to protect myself and Leo. Another silence descended, but this one felt different, less tense, more reflective. I don't know what this means for us, Mother, Charlotte finally said, her voice raw. For our relationship. I don't know if you can ever forgive me. My gaze drifted to a framed photograph on a nearby table, a younger Charlotte, beaming, her arm around my shoulders. The sweet child, the eager young woman I had adored for so long. The hurt, the deep sense of betrayal was still very real, a scar on my heart. But beneath it, a tiny ember of that old love still flickered. I don't know either, Charlotte, I admitted honestly. The hurt runs deep. But one thing I do know is that Leo shouldn't be caught in the middle of this. He loves you and he loves me. He deserves to have us both in his life, in whatever form that takes. I looked at her, my voice gaining strength. He can visit me whenever he wants, of course. And his college education, despite everything that's happened, is still secure through the trust. That was never in question. Charlotte's eyes widened, a fresh wave of tears welling up. The depth of my continued generosity towards Leo, despite her actions, seemed to break through her remaining defenses. You're a better mother than I deserved, she choked out, her voice thick with emotion. She rose then, ready to leave. Thank you, Mother, she said, her voice quiet. Thank you for seeing me. Just as we reached the door, Leo bounded back, his face alight with excitement. Grandma, they have an arcade, and a movie theater, and a giant chess set outside. This place is amazing. His enthusiasm was infectious, a vivid reminder of the unbreakable bond that still tied Charlotte and me together through him. And Leo, I said, a gentle smile on my face, your room is always ready for you, whenever you want to come and stay. My second bedroom, now beautifully furnished, was indeed waiting for him. Charlotte looked at me then, her eyes swimming with unshed tears. I'm so sorry, Mother, she repeated, her apology this time imbued with a sincerity I hadn't seen before. I reached out, gently touching her arm. I know, Charlotte, I said softly, the acceptance finally blooming in my heart. I know. I watched them walk away, Leo chattering happily, Charlotte's head still slightly bowed, but no longer quite so burdened. As they disappeared around the corner, I returned to my balcony, the warmth of the sun on my face. A profound sense of peace settled over me, a quiet understanding that I had not only reclaimed my dignity and my future, but perhaps, just perhaps, I had also opened the door, however slightly, to a new fragile beginning for my family, on my own terms.